Thank you to be so early to my presentation. So I will speak about my journey in PostgreSQL bug fixing. So first of all, a few words about me. So I am working around databases since about 25 years. I did mainly Oracle, but it's over because I fell in love for Postgres, and that's why now I am working at AWS in the contributor team, where we contribute upstream to bug fix and new features. This is my Twitter handle and my blog. So let's see about the agenda quickly. So first of all, I will tell you what this presentation is not about. Of course, I will not be exhaustive because this will be the only point. And then we will see what this presentation is about. And after, I will present when a bug is discovered, what I usually do. But first of all, how many of you already hit a Postgres bug? Okay. How many of you were able to produce a repro? And how many of you submitted a patch? Okay, so I think this presentation could make sense then. And then we will see some example with live demo, if it works. So what this presentation is not about, so it's not about providing a complete guide on how to report a bug. There is a Postgres documentation. I will give the link later. And this is not about providing a complete guide on how to fix a bug. And I am not sure it's even possible to write such a guide anyway. So what is it about? It's just about sharing my own experience, what I did on a few examples, and what I usually do. So when a bug is discovered, what to do? First, yes, I understand you could be very sad. It depends of the context, like usually. I mean, if it is on a Sunday morning and you are paged and this is your critical production database, yes, I understand that could be sad. On the other hand, also it depends of the context. It could be a good opportunity to reach out to the community. Let's say you are working on a new project, you just start in and you discover the bug. And the cool thing about bug, when you reach out to the community, is you don't have to argue. I mean, it's not a new feature, it's a bug. And normally, everybody agrees it has to be fixed. So what I usually do when I find a bug, I try to get a repro, because without that, it's difficult to fix. I will check if it is fixed in a most recent version. Who knows? And then I will try to write a patch. And at the end, even if the patch I think is not perfect, I submitted it just to start the conversation anyway. And then I report the bug following this link. So we will see several examples, 3. They are sorted by level of difficulty. So the first one, no C coding is needed. Just a git command and you can already make a good report in some occasion. The second one, there is no need to build a repro. You have the repro, but we will try to provide a patch. And the last one, we have nothing except the error. So we will try to build a repro and write a patch. None of them have been fixed the way I submitted the patch, but I learned during this journey, so that's cool. And the best thing is all of them have been fixed at the end. So yes, I think it's time for a live demo. So give me a second. You see, everybody? Okay. And then, okay. Okay. So first one, I will set up a 13 environment. Yeah, I will start the instance. And what I will do is, so I will launch this stuff. So this stuff is creating a table, a trigger, dropping colon, and launching. Ensure the trigger is triggered. It's not very important. What is important is that if you launch it, so it crashed. So this is coming from real life. It was on a 13 last minor. So idea now is to check if it is fixed on 14 last minor that existed at this time. So let's do that. Let's create a 14 environment. Let's start it and launch it. So it works. So it means in 14 last minor it works, in 13 last minor we have an issue. We could already reach out to the community and say, I have this bug, I have this repro, it's fixed on 14, could you please fix it on 13? That's good, but I mean, we can do better than that. We can do, this is the commit that you need to backpatch, for example. So let's try to do that. So exit. So to do so, I will use git bisect. So he's looking for a bad and a good commit. Normally, this stuff is used to find a commit that breaks something. So the good commit has to be the older one. In our case, we will just invert both words because we want to know the commit that fixed something. So for us, the bad commit will be when it works and the good when it crashed. So you have to go to the git log and find one commit where it's good and one where it's not good. So I already did this research. So this is a good commit, mean it crashed. And this is a bad commit. So when you do that, Git automatically switch to another commit. So this is this one, FA something. So we need to recompile. And install. Initialize the instance. Start. No, stop. Start. And then launch the stuff. Okay, so it failed. So it means with this commit, we can say git bisect, this is a good commit for us. So let's say it is a good commit. So automatically it switched to another commit, which is E9 or something, as you can see here. So again, let's compile. Initialize the instance. Start it. Connect to it. And launch our stuff. It works. So it means for us, this commit is a bad commit. So let's tell git bisect. Bad. So we switch to another one, which is 20D3. So remember this one. So again, compile. Initialize the instance. Start. Connect and launch our stuff. It works. So let's tell to git bisect this is a bad commit. Boom. So git bisect say, okay, so this is this commit that fixes your issue. So now we can reach out to the community saying, you have this issue in 13, it's fixed in 14, and the commit that fixes in 14 is this one. Could you please just backpatch it? If it makes sense, of course. So let's see how it has been fixed. So this is this commit that fix it. So it has been fixed by Tom, and he's mentioning the commit that we just discovered. And this is the one that he backpatched, and he also explained why at that time he did not think it was a problem on 13. Okay, so I think the main takeaway from this one is that even if sometimes without C coding you can already reach out to the community with a very good explanation or detail of the issue and the commit that could help to solve the issue. So let's see another one. So for this one, we have the repro, and we will try to build a patch. I create the environment. I start the instance. So I create a table with the primary key. I insert 2 rows with value 1 and 2. I create another table. I insert a row into it. And then I do display block. So for in 1, 2, I will insert into the first table, means we will have a primary key violation because those values already exist. So in case of primary violation, I am updating the second table. And if I do that, it crashed. So it occurs when I was doing some stuff personally, and when I am developing something, I am always using an instance with assertion enable. So the first thing I do is to grep for assert in the log file, who knows? And then, cool, yes, here that was the case. We had a failed assertion. So we have the file name and the line number, so just open it. So the issue is there, so this is this failed assertion. He wants portal snapshot to be null, and so it's not the case. One important stuff to see is that we also have this here, active snapshot set, and if it returns true, then we cannot reach the assertion in any case. So I will be interested to see the portal snapshot value and what is in this function. So just to show you some, to see what the function contains, I am using gtags. So you can do git like this, launch gtags, just open VI and ask for the definition of the function. So we have it here. So this function is just checking if active snapshot is not equal null. So to reach the failed assertion, what we need to do, we need to have active snapshot equals null, and we need to have the portal snapshot being non-null. So let's try to see in which condition we reach those failed assertion. So I will attach a debugger on this backend. So I copy the PID and I attach a debugger on it. And so I want to see portal snapshot, how it evolves in the time, the value. So I create a breakpoint when we will create the portal. Then this breakpoint is just for us to be able to see the query that is being running. This one is before we enter the problematic function. This one is on the problematic function. And this one is the failed assertion. So let's run. Launch in the backend or PL stuff. Oops, okay, so we enter the first breakpoint, we enter create portal. So let's go to the end before he returns the portal. So for the moment, I only use a breakpoint. So here we will return the portal, so we can check portal snapshot. Okay, this is null, whatever. So I want to see it when it change value and where and why. So I will set a watch point on this address. So I do this like this. So now every time the value will change, it will break, and we will see why and where. Let's continue. So it changed here, whatever. You can see that, you can see where you are with a backtrace, for example, this one. And then we continue, and now we enter the problematic function. So here, this is the if before we go to the assertion. So here we also want to see where it changed value to return true or false. So remember, the function is checking for active snapshot. So this is it. So again, set a watch point on it. Okay, so now we have two watch points of interest, and we will see how the value change and when we will reach the problematic sequence. Let's continue. So here we are in the function. Okay, now we enter this. So what are we doing now? So now we are doing the first insert. That's the first time we see it. So that's the first one, so value 1. Let's continue. So here we can see that we will enter the problematic function, this one, enter. We have the active snapshot, which is not null, so here we will return. So far, so good. We continue, so the active snapshot is changing from not null to not null. Just when, again, if you are interested to see where it happens, you can display the backtrace. And then we continue. Okay, so now we are doing the update. The primary key has been violated, so now the update is triggered. Let's continue. So we will enter the problematic function again. We still have active snapshot not null, so we will exit. And continue. So here, from not null to not null, so that's good. Again, where we are. Here still from not null to not null. Continue. Oh, now we are changing the portal snapshot from not null to null. So here, the assertion will be happy. He is checking the portal snapshot is null. So here it will be okay. Let's continue. Just check where you are, but okay. So here, the active snapshot is changing from not null to null, which means that when we continue here, we are doing now the second insertion. So we are inserting value 2. Let's continue. So here it's changing from null to not null. Here from not null to null. Let's continue. We will enter the problematic function. So now we have our active snapshot, which is null. So we will go down, we will not return. Yes, it returned false. And then we still go down. But likely, our portal snapshot is still null. We did not see it being changed from not null. So far, we are still good. Let's continue. The assertion is okay, no problem. And let's continue. So now we are changing the active snapshot from null to not null. And here from the portal snapshot from null to not null. So now we are not good for the portal snapshot. It just changed to not null. Let's continue. Here, this one is from not null to null. Still not null, null, not null, not null. And now you see it's changing from not null to null. So now we have everything that is needed to reach the failed assertion. So just check where we are. We are in this function. Just remind it. In fact, we are aborting the sub-transaction. Let's continue. What we will do now, that's the last update. So yes, so that's the last update due to the primary key violation of the second insert. Okay, so we will enter the problematic function. We will enter the problematic function. So here we will not return because it is null. So we continue. And here we are on the failed assertion, but our portal snapshot is not null, so it will crash. And that's it. So at that time, I knew almost nothing about Portal. I just know a little bit more now, but I wanted to provide a patch. So I did something very simple. Remember the function that we have seen when it changed to a bad value. So the patch is just this. Yeah, I know that sounds very simple, but if we use this, and we relaunch the stuff, so the patch is applied here. Then it works. So yes, I had the repro. I have a patch that I knew was certainly not the good one, but it's helpful to start the discussion with and to describe the issue. So I reach out to the community with the repro and with this patch, saying I doubt it's the good way to fix it, but that's how I fix it currently. And then it has been fixed on the community side. So guess what? It's much more complicated than what I have done. But the cool thing is that Tom jumped in the thread and kind of guide me on how to fix this stuff. So during this process, I learned a little bit more about the portal, and so that was good for me to learn new things. And at the end, the bug has been fixed. So I think that's the most important. So the takeaway for this one, I would say, don't be ashamed. I mean, even if you provide a patch that you know is certainly not the good one, just provide it and say you think that is certainly not the right way, but this is what you have done so far. So let's see the last one. So I start an instance, and I want to do logical decoding on a slot. And boom, I have this. I have nothing else. So this is not a repro, but hopefully we are lucky because we have something that we can run, and that will produce always the same issue. So how I start with that? Usually I grab for the error in the C code. So let's do that. I grab for the error. And hopefully, there is only one place when this occurs. So I have been lucky somehow. So now, let's open the file. So it's here. Let's go to the line. And no, let's check for the error. Okay, so the error is there. Could not find not map file number. So it's doing this because we have an invalid relo ID. The relo ID is coming from this function. When we give a file number, a rel file number, and he should return a relo ID. Yeah, so this function, and currently we are in this function when we are reordering the transaction during logical decoding. Let's check on WinLine. You have the issue. So this is the line number here. Where is that? Here. I want to see what the rel file number really is doing. Who knows? So yes, it's doing what I said. So it's returned the relo ID given a table space and a rel file number. Okay, so now with that, again, let's attach a debugger. Let's copy the PID and attach a debugger on it. And relaunch the logical decoding. First, no, let's set a breakpoint where the issue occurs. And on the on the function that returns an invalid ID. Let's continue and launch the logical decoding. Okay, so we are in the function that will return the rel file number. So let's move on in this function a bit. So here it's initializing the stuff. Okay, what is important is there. So it will open the relation ID, which is in fact a PG class. I'm not sure if you can see with the color, but yeah, it's written here. So we are opening PG class, and so we will be looking for the rel file number in PG class and return the OID that we will find, or not. And yeah, so this is the rel file number we are looking for, so keep it in mind. Let's continue. And then, yeah, so he was not able to find it because we get the rel ID as an invalid ID. Let's see the transaction that we are decoding now. So we are decoding 740. Let's quit, and let's see what this transaction is doing. So for this, oh, sorry, come back. So we have seen that we open PG class, and we want to see the logical decoding. Open PG class and want to find the relational ID for this rel file number. So what if we do the query ourselves? Oh, we have something. And the xmin is before the 740, so it means the logical decoding should see it. So it means somewhere it is a visibility issue for the logical decoding. We can see it, but the logical decoding does not. Let's try to understand why. So first, let's see what the transaction that we are decoding is doing. So it's doing nothing but an insert on the rel file number. Let's see who else manipulated this rel file number. So this one manipulated and created this rel file number, but somehow we already knew it because it's there. So, okay. So what did this transaction? So this transaction did a truncate. So a truncate generated a full table rewrite. So it created the new rel file number here. So this is a new rel file number created due to a truncate. And this is a sub-transaction as well. We can see this is a sub-transaction of this. So we have to, not all of this, keep it in mind to build our repro, in fact. But it is doing simple stuff. Let's see what the parent transaction is doing? Okay, it's doing nothing except committing. So that's good. It's not that complicated. We have a parent transaction, a sub-transaction that does a truncate, and later on, another transaction want to insert in this relation. That's it. But the logical decoding is not able to see it. Why? So this is the file here that is building the snapshot for the logical decoding, the MVCC snapshot for the logical decoding. There is some remarks that are important here. First of all, we only need to access the catalog tables, not the user data tables. And this is exactly what we are doing. We are accessing PG class, which is a catalog table. Then it's saying that we cannot rely on the C-log to know what has been committed or not. And then he's explaining what is inside a snapshot for the logical decoding. So outside of the logical decoding, you have a snapshot, you have the X-min, the X-max. Everything before the X-min is visible, everything after the X-max is not visible, and in between you have the ongoing transaction. For logical decoding, snapshot is not the same. I mean, X-min and X-max are the same, but between the two, this is the transaction the committed transaction that modified the catalog. Means we should see 739 here. Let's see if we see it or not. First of all, let's check a few functions here. So this is the function that build the snapshot, the transaction. So there is function that says there is a catalog change, yes or no. Let's continue. And then, yeah, so here, this is a link to the new CID stuff to detect if yes or no we are modifying the catalog. So, and what are the Xlog record, so the whole record associated to it. So this is this one. Okay, so it means that the logical decoding, if it sees this whole record, is saying, okay, this transaction is modifying the catalog. Let's see if we have it or yes or no. Let's look again at this our transaction that modified the catalog. So yes, we have them. It's there. So logical decoding, if it reads this whole record, it should be able to say this transaction modified the catalog. So why? What is it failing? Let's see where the replication slot starts from. So it starts from this LSN. Let's copy the LSN. And start from there, the whole dump. There is a bunch of stuff, but I mean, you can believe me, there is no the new CID stuff. So it's starting from a position, the logical decoding is starting from a position where there is no the new CID. So that's why he does not know that it modified the catalog. Let's double check that. Here, so this is our problematic transaction, and this is a grep that put everything of interest into the same output. And we can see this here, the running XAT stuff is the place where the logical decoding is restarting, and we can see that the new CID are before that. So that's why we don't. That's why the logical decoding does not know it is modifying the catalog. Let's try to validate that. So attach a debugger, a breakpoint on the problematic line, breakpoint on the place where we should set the catalog change, and resume. Let's decode. We are in the problematic place. Let's see the snapshot that has been built. So the Xmin is this one. The Xmax is the same, and there is nothing in between. So 739 is not there. It is not seen as a transaction that modified the catalog. And that's why it failed. So there is a trick to, when it builds the snapshot, to make it believe that everything modified the catalog. So let's just use that. So another breakpoint. Relaunch the stuff. So we are in the function that will build the catalog, the snapshot, sorry. Okay, so we are working on this XID, this transaction. So the subs transaction is this one, which is true. So one way to tell him, okay, now this sub transaction is modifying the catalog, is to put all those variables to true. That's not the solution. That's just a way to ensure that we understood the problem correctly. And let's continue. So now we are in the problematic function. So again, let's see the snapshot that he has now. So we are decoding the problematic function, transaction. Let's check the catalog, the snapshot. So the Xmin is this one. Oh, now we have the good Xmax. It's now 740. That's good. Let's see who is in the middle. So the transaction, the committed transaction that modify the catalog. We have this one, which is true. And we also have now our 739. So with this snapshot, does that work? Yes, that works. So now we have been able to decode without any error. So using GDB and forcing him to see somehow the transaction as a transaction that modified the catalog, it works. So it means that our understanding of the problem is correct, which is already good. Now let's try to build a repro. So this is the list of sequences that happen. So remember, we have a parent transaction that created a subtransaction. The subtransaction did a truncate, and later on, an insert, a transaction tried to insert in the same relation. So let's do that. Here is just showing again. So let's create a new logical slot. And let's try to build a repro. So I create a table. Here in this one, I will just launch logical decoding on this replication slot. Okay. Here I want to see how the logical replication slot behave, because we have to be careful with when we do the checkpoint to ensure that it's done in exact same order as we have seen here. So let's create a subtransaction that truncates our table. And then here create a checkpoint and wait for the confirm flush LSN to change. If it wants to. That might be okay. So let's end. Now let's do the insert. So again, let's do the insert and do the checkpoint and wait for the restart LSN to change as well. Okay. Cancel our logical decoding. And now here, commit and try to decode. Okay, it does not work. You have the exact same error. So we have our repro now. So that's good. So just by, not just, analyzing the whole log, we are able to have our repro. So we have a repro. Now let's just try to build a patch. So this is the patch that we submitted. So basically, we are saying if we see catalog invalidation in the commit message, then we are saying that all transactions that are part of this commit modify the catalog, whether or not it's true. I mean, it could be transactions that don't modify the catalog, but at the end, it does not matter. So that's what we did. With the patch in place, if I start the instance and I try to decode, that works. So we submitted this patch. Let's see how it has been fixed at the end. So it has been fixed that way. So on the master branch, what has been done is when we write the snapshot on disk, now we ensure that we also include the transaction that modify the catalog. But this is not possible to do that on back branches because we modify the structure, so it will not be compatible. So on the back branches, what has been done is more or less what we did propose. Yeah, so the takeaway of this one is with a little bit of effort. I mean, here it's like 10 minutes, but I think it took me weeks. So you can try to build a repro and a patch and to go back to the community with that. And yes, I think that's what I wanted to show you. So if you have any question.